speaking of that, as we head into a midterm year, President Trump predicts the 2026 midterm elections will center around pricing, with the balance of power in Congress on the line.
Madeleine Rivera joining us live from Washington with the details. Good morning, Madeleine.
Good morning. President Trump's message heading into next year is that they're fixing the inflation they inherited under the Biden administration and that Americans will start to feel their economic policies. The president saying, I think it's going to be about the success of our country. It'll be about pricing. They gave us high pricing and we're bringing it down. Energy's way down. Gasoline is way down. That's what he said to Politico. The White House is feeling a boost after some positive economic indicators. The U.S. economy grew at a rate of 4.3% in the third quarter of the year, driven mainly by consumer spending, exports, and government spending. Inflation cooled to an annual rate of 2.7% in November, and the average gas price is $2.85 per gallon. The president crediting his tariffs while also highlighting the data, saying on Truth Social, tariffs are creating great wealth and unprecedented national security for the USA. Trade deficit has been cut by 60%, totally unheard of. 4.3% GDP and going way up. No inflation. We are respected as a country again. All of this has Republicans feeling bullish that they can gain the upper hand on affordability. Democrats have been on the offensive on the issue, riding a wave of victories at the ballot box this year after placing the cost of living front and center. But a Fox News poll shows 72% rate the economy negatively, 72% of voters at that. A lot of that negative sentiment is driven by 9 in 10 Democrats and independents giving the economy bad marks. Nearly half of Republicans feel the same. Charlie, Lisa, and Griff.
Thanks, Maddie.
Thanks, Maddie. Well, certainly, without a doubt, the issue of affordability and pricing is going to be a huge issue in the coming election. And, you know, one of the things that Charlie Kirk often talked about was the incredible cost of getting onto that first rung of the ladder, which is buying your first home. And the average age of a first-time home buyer in 1981 was 29 years old. Today, it is 40 years old. And, you know, we can argue about a lot of different things, but when you look at a statistic like that, it's a shocking statistic. And the question is, what are politicians going to do about, how are they going to solve this problem? Obviously, one of the biggest things that affects this is national debt. When the cost of debt, when you rack up $40 trillion in debt, capital becomes much more expensive. It becomes much more, companies wind up investing in homes, which raises the price of those homes, all kinds of bad things like that. But one of the things that I think is really dangerous is when you have political leaders lecturing young people about being wiser with their money and blaming young people for the cost of houses today, when this is the same generation of leaders who gave us $40 trillion in debt. It makes it really, really difficult for young people. And I think the future of politics is figuring out this problem and convincing those young people that they can still get onto the first rung of the American dream.
Yeah, and look, to be fair to young people, you can't blame them. If you go back just a couple of years ago, when inflation under President Joe Biden was 9%,
yeah,
you can't blame young people for feeling that life altogether is just unaffordable, not just housing, everything. But this is what the Trump administration is saying. Look at some of the major milestones that they are starting to turn that tide in the right direction. The 4.3% GDP growth is a big one. That blew away expectations, and that is why people at the Wall Street Journal, like James Freeman, say that the really resurgence of the economy is the most underreported story of the year. But you do see in the numbers we've got up there, the 30-year fixed mortgage rate has come down a little bit. Overall inflation at 2.7%. Gas prices, by the way, you see there, cheaper than it was a year ago, 2.82. On Friday, we were talking a little bit about this, and I had a friend in New Caney, Texas, texted me when we were talking about it, said, hey, I just filled my car up in New Caney, Texas at Walmart, $2.07. So depending on where you are in the country, you certainly are feeling it. Shelter inflation down from over 4% this time last year to 3%. And it's fascinating because you do have, if you look state by state, states like California, which has the highest of the inflation, the hardest places for young people to buy homes. I'm excited that we have HUD Secretary Scott Turner on today because we've heard so much about the administration soon to lay out their plan to make it affordable for young people to get into that first rung, as Charlie pointed out. And we don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but the numbers are starting to turn in their favor. You hear people like Kevin Hassett, Howard Lutnick saying that things are looking good now, but it's next year that things are really going to go well when they have the tax cuts, when they have more deregulation.
Yeah, and every election comes down to that infamous James Carville quote, it's the economy stupid. Yeah. This election cycle, it's affordability stupid, right? So it's the same thing, just framed in a different manner. And you see those numbers that Griff just laid out, a lot of positive movement for Republicans heading in the midterms. So if that continues to bear out and come to fruition ahead of the midterms, that will set Republicans up nicely as well. And you get to the issue of home buyership. I will say I'm 40 still very, very young. But yeah, we want that number to be earlier in life. But people are also getting married later as well. And I think home ownership's one of those things you tend to do more as a married couple, right? Like it sort of signifies the growth of a family and developing a family as well. You also have a lot of young people saddled with student loan debt. And that is a big barrier to home ownership as well. We're going to have the HUD Secretary coming up here. He also penned an op-ed for Fox News. And another thing that he had listed, which is important, is how immigration and illegal aliens have impacted the housing market as well. He writes about how foreign-born migrants accounted for 2/3 of growth in rental demand across the country. Some places, such as California and New York, saw 100% growth in migrant-fueled rental demand. So that's another question that we'll have for him as well. So a lot of big issues. Obviously, the Trump administration trying to address this wants to make the economy stronger for all Americans, including younger people.
And of course, if we're going to be talking...
40, which is still young, too.
Yeah, 40 is very young, extremely young.
Want even more Fox News on YouTube? Become a Fox News Patriot today. Click join to find out how.